History's full of stories. Some of them are brave, some are tragic, but a few are just plain unbelievable. Soldiers chased off a battlefield by bees and straight into a lion's mouth. Today on Crash Past, we're walking through 6 of the strangest moments history ever gave us. The most destructive force humanity has ever unleashed, the atomic bomb. In August of 1945, 2 such bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hundreds of thousands of lives were lost, countless others forever altered. Amidst the ruins, a remarkable story unfolded. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. On a business trip, a day like any other, or so he thought. He saw the light before he heard the sound, a blinding flash that seared the sky, then the roar that followed, tearing through the very fabric of the city. The atomic bomb flattened Hiroshima, but Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived. Badly burned, his eardrums ruptured, he sought refuge in the wreckage. The world around him a hellscape of fire and debris. He spent the night in a shelter, his body racked with pain and shock. The following day he boarded a train, desperate to return home to his family in Nagasaki. 3 days later he arrived in Nagasaki, his wounds still raw, his mind still reeling from the horrors he had witnessed. As he made his way through the city, weary and bandaged, fate dealt him a cruel hand. The unthinkable happened. Again, the second bomb fell. He lived through that one too. Pulled from the rubble by rescue workers, his burned and battered body a testament to his incredible survival. When he told his story, doctors refused to believe him. How could one man survive 2 atomic bombs? It seemed impossible. But eventually, his story was confirmed. Yamaguchi lived into his 90s, he raised a family, and spent his later years speaking out against war. Medieval Europe, a time of castles and knights of faith and fear. But amidst the pageantry and piety, a darkness lurked. Superstition held sway, and the line between the living and the dead was easily blurred. It was in this world, in the year 897 AD, that one of the strangest events in papal history unfolded. Pope Stephen VI, driven by ambition and vengeance, had a score to settle with his predecessor, Pope Formosus. Formosus was dead, laid to rest in the hallowed halls of the Basilica of St. Peter. But death offered no escape from the wrath of Stephen VI. In a macabre display of power, Stephen VI ordered Pope Formosus's body exhumed. Dragged from its resting place, the decaying corpse, clad in papal vestments, was placed on a throne in the basilica. And so began the Cadaver Synod. A deacon was appointed to speak for the deceased pope, to answer the charges leveled against him. Charges of perjury, of violating canon law, accusations whispered in life and now screamed at a lifeless corpse. The trial was a spectacle, a grotesque mockery of justice. When the macabre trial reached its inevitable conclusion, Pope Formosus was found guilty. His papacy declared null and void. The corpse was stripped of its papal robes, clad in the rags of a commoner, and dragged through the streets of Rome. Finally, it was dumped unceremoniously into the Tiber River. The Australian outback, a vast and unforgiving landscape home to creatures found nowhere else on Earth. Kangaroos, koalas, and the emu, a flightless bird that stands as tall as a man. But in the 1930s, this national symbol became a national nuisance. The Great War had just ended, and Australia, like much of the world, was struggling. Farmers in Western Australia faced a new enemy, emus. Tens of thousands of them, driven by drought, descended upon their land, devouring crops and destroying fences. Desperate pleas for help reached the government, and a decision was made. The emus had to be stopped. What followed was one of the most bizarre military campaigns in history. Armed with Lewis machine guns, soldiers were dispatched to the Western Australian wheat belt, their mission to wage war on the emu. The emus, however, proved to be formidable opponents. Fast and surprisingly intelligent, they scattered at the first sound of gunfire, making them difficult targets. They flanked the soldiers. The guns jammed, the birds kept running. After several weeks, less than 1,000 emus had been killed. The Great Emu War, as it became known, was a resounding defeat for the Australian Army. The operation had failed. To this day, the Australian government has never won a war against emus. The Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Oregon, a place of rugged beauty, where the wildness of nature is on full display. But in November 1970, this stretch of coastline became the stage for an event as bizarre as it was explosive. A 45-foot sperm whale, dead and in an advanced state of decomposition, washed ashore near the town of Florence. The carcass, bloated with gases, posed a problem. The stench alone was unbearable, and the potential for an explosion was a very real concern. The authorities, unsure of how to dispose of such a massive and potentially dangerous creature, turned to a solution as unconventional as the problem itself: dynamite. Half a ton of it, to be exact. The idea was to blast the whale into smaller pieces, making it easier for scavengers to dispose of. Onlookers gathered on the cliffs overlooking the beach, cameras in hand, eager to witness this unusual spectacle. The countdown began, and with a deafening roar, the explosives detonated. What followed was not the clean, surgical removal the authorities had hoped for. Chunks of whale rained down on bystanders, with some weighing hundreds of pounds. A chunk of blubber crushed the roof of a parked car that was a quarter-mile away. The exploding whale of Florence, as it came to be known, is a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes even the best-laid plans can go spectacularly and explosively wrong. London, 1814. The heart of the Industrial Revolution, a city teeming with life, industry, and a thirst for beer that seemed unquenchable. In the St. Giles Rookery, one of the city's poorest slums, a disaster was brewing, literally. The Horseshoe Brewery, a sprawling complex of vats and barrels, stood at the heart of the neighborhood. Inside, thousands of gallons of porter, a dark and heavy beer favored by London's working class, were fermenting. One October afternoon, a vat, towering over 30 feet tall and containing over 3,500 barrels of porter, suddenly ruptured. The immense pressure of the fermenting beer proved too much for the aging wooden structure. The failure of that single vat triggered a chain reaction. One by one, other vats in the brewery succumbed to the strain, releasing a torrent of beer into the surrounding streets. A wave of dark, frothy liquid, 15 feet high in places, surged through the narrow alleyways of the St. Giles Rookery. Homes were inundated, their flimsy walls no match for the force of the beer flood. Cellars filled, taverns were overwhelmed, and the streets ran black with porter. 8 people lost their lives that day, drowned in the torrent or crushed beneath the debris of collapsing buildings. The London beer flood, as it came to be known, was a tragedy born of industrial negligence and the insatiable thirst of a city. In the aftermath, there were calls for accountability, for justice for those who had lost their lives. But in the end, no one was held responsible. The African Savannah, a land of breathtaking beauty and unparalleled cruelty. In 1914, the horrors of the First World War, already raging across Europe, spilled over into this untamed wilderness. In the heart of German East Africa, near the Savo River, a small contingent of British and German soldiers clashed. The air, thick with humidity and tension, crackled with gunfire. But on this day, the roar of rifles would be drowned out by a sound far more primal. A massive swarm of African honeybees, disturbed perhaps by the sounds of battle or drawn by the scent of sweat and gunpowder, descended upon the battlefield. The sky, moments before clear, darkened as the swarm approached, a buzzing, stinging cloud of chaos. The soldiers, veterans of trench warfare, found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The bees, their stings venomous and relentless, showed no mercy. Panic spread through the ranks as men, their faces and hands covered in stinging insects, broke formation and fled. Their flight, however, led them from one danger straight into the jaws of another. The Tsavo region was notorious for its lions, particularly a pair of man-eating males that had terrorized railway workers years earlier. The panicked soldiers, their uniforms offering little protection against claws and teeth, were easy prey. The Battle of Taveta serves as a sobering reminder that the greatest enemy often lies not in the weapons of man, but in the unforgiving hand of nature itself. Outro crash into history. Bees, lions, beer floods, and dead popes, a whale that exploded, and a man who survived the end of the world, twice. These aren't legends, these are facts. If stories like these make you lean in and listen, stick with us. Subscribe, because there's more where this came from. And until next time, don't just remember history, crash into it.